Alrighty, so today we're going to talk about Orlando City in the Moving Forward series episode, and there's no doubt that this season for Orlando City, it kind of felt like it was a season of glass half full, because on one hand, yes, they were able to win their first trophy in franchise history in the US Open Cup, albeit in a controversial way, and that they're going to be in CCL for the first time ever after winning the US Open Cup, and not to mention they're able to make it to the playoffs for the third year in a row. But on the other hand, oh boy, this is definitely going to go down as one of the most frustrating seasons for Orlando City in league play. And that's saying a lot because this team has gone through a lot of frustrating season, especially during their first 5 years when they weren't able to make it to the playoffs and have all those kind of collapsing season in the second half where they just completely gone through a tailspin. And in some way, you can say that that was kind of the case too, because they were definitely heading to a tailspin and looked like they were going to slip out of the playoffs. But as I mentioned in the Columbus Crew Moving Forward series episode, they were able to sneak into the playoffs of that big win on decision day. But overall, they did finish with a 14-6 and 14 record and finished with 48 points. They scored 44 goals this season, but they allowed 53 goals this year. Yeah, this was supposed to be one of the best defensive team in the league ever since Oscar Pereira took over, and there is no doubt that that defense really regressed this season, and they finished with a goal differential of -9. They finished 7th in the Eastern Conference, so they just sneaked in to the playoffs for the third straight season, but they got eliminated by Montreal in the first round. I don't think a lot of people are that surprised about that because, Orlando, even though, yes, they got that miraculous win against Columbus to sneak into the playoffs, against Montreal, especially on the road, it was always going to be a tough task. And not to mention, Montreal wants to have some revenge after Orlando last season, or not last season, but the prior season actually knocked Montreal out of the playoffs on the final day. Yeah, that was never going to be a great matchup for Orlando City, and that it feels like, for Orlando, it was kind of delayed the inevitable, the fact that, yes, they made it to the playoffs, but you definitely have a sense that they're not going to really do much unless if they decide to go on an RSL type of kind of a run, which clearly did not happen for Orlando City in the Eastern Conference playoffs. Now, in terms of the top goal scored, Ajay Kara actually finished with 11 goals, and that's kind of interesting because, I would say that for most part, a lot of Orlando City fans have not been liking the production that Kara, of course, would made, and I'll probably explain why exactly that, of course, is the case later in this Moving Forward series episode. But besides that, you got Facundo Torres with 9 goals. You got Urso with 5 goals, Tesha Akindele with 3 goals, and Pato finished with 3 goals. Now, notice those 3 players that I've just mentioned, they're no longer with Orlando City. In fact, Orlando City did a lot of changes this offseason. In some way, you can maybe even say they kind of dropped a nuke, especially in terms of their depth pieces, and just completely decided to go through a transformation in terms of the depth that they pretty much just blowed it up during this off season. Now, in terms of the top assist leader, unsurprisingly, Mauricio Pereira is still the top assist leader with 11 assists, but that is followed by Facundo Torres with 10 assists, Junior Urso with 7 assists, Pato with 6 assists, and Angulo with 3 assists to round up the top 5 assist leader for this Orlando City side. So, what are some of the highlights of Orlando City? So, as I mentioned, they've won their first ever trophy in the US Open Cup, albeit in a very controversial way because of the whole Spygate situation with them. Allegedly, one of the members decided to spy on the Republic training session just days before the game is happening. But still, in the end, the only thing that they kind of got punished was just a small fine. And I had a feeling that of course, is the case. As much as I know there's going to be some MLS fans that's not going to be happy, and especially Sacramento fans are not going to be happy about that, I didn't think the U.S. Soccer Federation was going to take some really dramatic kind of punishment, where the fact that the worst case scenario is the fact that Orlando City might actually get their Open Cup titles kind of revoked. But of course, that didn't look like it was going to happen, and indeed that was the case. And then they made the playoffs again in a dramatic fashion on decision day. Again, a lot of that thanks to the fact that they were playing the Columbus Crew, a team that basically has been just a Santa Claus in the final 15 minutes of the game, just gifting points and gifting goals like it's still Christmas every single day, and that they were able to make it to the playoffs on a dramatic fashion, albeit it looked like they were dead and Barry after they lost that big 4-1 result against Inter Miami. Now, some of the lowlights for this Orlando City team, and boy, there was definitely a lot of lowlights. And again, this season, depending on how you view this, if you're an Orlando City fan, it could be a season that's kind of glass half full because they at least won a trophy, or a glass half empty because of how frustrating the regular season is. And one of the frustration, inconsistency. Inconsistency was a huge problem for this team, and I talked about throughout the season they follow this pattern of win, draw, loss, and that they just never able to find that consistency to basically start to of course get on a winning streak. And that, I think, inconsistency also maybe drive to the fact that the attendance haven't been that good at Orlando City games, because as a fan you just don't know which Orlando City is going to show up. Is it going to be an Orlando City team that's going to be decent and look like a world beater, or is it going to be the Orlando City team that looked like the worst team in the Eastern Conference? Because for a while there was that problem in the first half of the season, and then the second half of the season happened. And throughout this team's kind of narrative, it's always been in the first 5 years where they start off well and then they just collapse in the second half of the season, and they did it again. It was a typical fall off the cliff kind of moment in the middle of the season, and again they only made it because of the fact that some other team around them also started to lose too, and not to mention they were able to just sneak into the final day after a kind of a little mini play-in game that they had against the Columbus Crew. And then the second thing that has a lowlights for this team is that this team went from pretty much the most fun team to watch just 2 years ago, especially on the attack, to probably one of the most frustrating team to watch. And we talk about Oscar Pereira and what he has done to this team when he came into the league, and how he has instantly changed this team to be a very fun team to watch, and they play some of the most beautiful soccer we have seen. Well, fast forward 2 years later, yeah, so much for that. And I think maybe Dallas fans were kind of warning Orlando City fans in a way where I think when Oscar Pereira was with Dallas, the first couple of years it was definitely good because of the fact that they have the talent to play that beautiful soccer that Oscar Pereira tends to able to put out if he is given the talent. But when he's not given the talent, or those talent decide to move on from somewhere else, and in the case of Orlando City, they definitely lost some big pieces on the attacking end. I mean, losing guys like Nani and DK is definitely going to create problems in terms of continue to play that great brand of soccer that Orlando City play when Oscar Pereira came in. And as soon as they were gone and they tried to replace some of those guys, yeah, it just doesn't quite work out. And again, similar to what was doing his time with FC Dallas, as some of those big name players decided to leave the team. One of the most notable one, in Mauro Diaz, left the team. He started to really struggle with FC Dallas and started to play a very boring kind of soccer that we saw in this season, where again there's just so many times where I just have no idea what they what's their ideas whenever they get to the final third. Like every time when they get into the final third, it's like they're out of ideas. They don't know if they should play a through ball to try to set a player in. There was no movement whatsoever on the attack, and there's just at times it's just looked very stale and just look very frustrating too, with the way that they weren't even and good on the final third. And not to mention, there's also times where they miss some big opportunity in some of the games that they have played. But the other thing that is a big lowlights for this Orlando City team, I mentioned before, the defense. And Pedro Gallese, man, they regressed badly in this season. And again, part of that has to do with the fact that there was injuries to that back line. Antonio Carlos was out for most part of the season. But you can't say the same about Pedro Gallese. I mean, this is a guy that he was supposed to be one of the top 5 goalkeeper in this league. Well, this season, he didn't look like that. He looked like a player that has just been a complete downgrade, or looked like a guy that was a shell of his former self. And that, I think Orlando City, they're hoping that he will recover, because they just give him a big contract recently, because, yeah, again, he really had a bad season to his standard. And again, after making some big save that we've seen in season past, this year we haven't seen him make those big save as we've seen in previous year. Though I won't always all just put on him, because of the fact that the defense in front of him was a massive liability throughout this season. Now, in terms of the MVP and revelation, going to go with Mauricio Pereira. And again, Pereira, he is still the most important player on this attacking front, and probably now means even more to this attack because he's the guy that is pulling the string, even though he's not a natural number 10. And the issue with Mauricio Pereira, I will say, is the fact that he's continued to be injury prone. And, thankfully for Orlando City, they're able to get him off of that DP contract because I think the contract that he is earning, well, the way that he has played when he's not injured, definitely deserve to have that designated player kind of tag next to his name. He's just injured way too many times, and when you have that, of course, happen, that is got to be very frustrating. And also maybe that's another reason why this Orlando City team were very lackluster going for it on the attack, because when Pereira is not on this team, again, it just looks like they're just out of ideas, and they just don't have that guy that is pulling the string on the attacking end. Disappointment, it's got to be Arjan Kara. And again, when you look at the numbers that Arjan Kara puts, it's actually not that bad. I mean, for a DP forward, 11 goals and 3 assists isn't really bad, although you could say that maybe that's not kind of DP kind of caliber number for a DP number 9, but it's still a respectable one, and I've seen some worse DP number 9 that has put up worse number. Patrick Mala and stuff. But yeah, the reason why, even though his stats isn't that bad, what's kind of a huge disappointment for him this season is the fact that he just missed some big chances. I mean, in some way, he kind of reminds me a little bit of Jarzy Zardes when he was with the Columbus Crew, where Zardes is always a guy that can definitely puts up a good number. Or actually, I don't think Jarzy Zardes is a great comparison. I think I'm going to compare him as Kasper Shabilko with the Philadelphia Union, and in some extent with the Chicago Fire, because while Shabilko definitely puts up some good numbers during his time with the Philadelphia Union, there's times where he also frustrates Union fans because of those golden opportunity that he misses. And just going forward, it seems like there's times where when Arjan Kara is not the main number 9 for this team, this Orlando City team just look better on the attack compared to when he's not there. And that's a big indictment that maybe he, of course, is the issue. And also the movement of him, he just doesn't really create a lot of good movement, and just aren't able to at times even find himself in a good position to basically get into a good position to shoot and score. So yeah, despite the fact that he definitely had some good number in this one, it could have been much better. And this is also why that, for Orlando, they need to find a way in terms of buying down his contract, which, speaking of which, moving now to the moving forward part of this episode, I'll actually mention the first point of the fact that they need to find a way to buy down his contract. Again, this is similar to what we've seen with players that might not be living up to that DP tag. And while, Kara is definitely not a bad number 9, he's definitely not worthy to be a designated player. And I think they need to find a way to buy down his contract if they're able to do. I believe they have the option to do that, and that I won't be surprised if Orlando City is going to exercise that if they do have the option, because this feels like it's a waste of the DP spot if they're going to use a guy that, well, he has put up some good numbers. When you look at how he plays, it can frustrate a lot of fans of the way that he plays. And then the other thing moving forward for this team is that they need depth pretty much everywhere on this squad. Now, I will say the fact that the reason why they need depth is because they pretty much blown up. There are a lot of the depth pieces that are moving on from this team, and even some of the starters in this team have been moving on. And I will say that they have at least tried to add some depth pieces in this team and trying to replace them, but I still think it's not enough. And especially with the way that, again, one of the other things I want to talk about in the moving forward and just kind of skip into the third point, knowing the fact that they're going to be in CCL for the first time, they need to address the depth pieces, because when you're in CCL, and I mentioned before with teams that is going to be in CCL next season in the moving forward series, you need to load up on that depth chart, because if you don't load up on that depth chart, then you could be in serious trouble in terms of just have to play your starter every single game. And that, I think that's also another thing that kind of haunt this Orlando City team down the stretch, where I feel like this team just kind of ran out of gas. And And a lot of that is the fact that because they don't have a lot of depth, and this is kind of a very hollow kind of build team, they just kind of ran out of gas, and that this is why they need depth. Because if they want to avoid that situation to happen, especially they're going to be playing more games because of CCL, they absolutely need to address that badly. And then, of course, the last thing I haven't mentioned in the moving forward part of this episode is that they need reinforcement in the fullback position. So both of their fullbacks that they have from last season is gone. Juan is now moving on from Orlando City, and same goes with João Matinho. Now they have got Lucas Petrasso as the replacement for João Matinho's spot, and Petrasso, he's okay. I mean, I don't think he is gonna be a guy that is gonna come close to the quality that João Matinho of course have, and in some way that is not a big surprise because João Matinho is considered to be one of the best fullbacks in this league. But I think Lucas Petrasso could be a good kind of backup option until they might need to also address the other part of the fullback position, which is the right back position that Juan basically left, and that in that spot they still haven't really addressed it. I mean, they have some unproven kind of player, whether from their academy or from their second team, but again, those are unproven commodity, and that you don't know if that is going to of course work out. I mean, sometimes we've seen unproven kind of player and unproven commodity just kind of turns out to be well, but yeah, when you look at this Orlando City team, in terms of building within their academy, that hasn't really always been their strong point. Although one thing that at least it's kind of a strong point is the fact that they have done well in terms of the draft. Don't forget Daryl DK that they sold was coming from the draft, and knowing the fact that they also went pretty crazy in terms of drafting a lot of players in the super draft, I expect those players could maybe even get some minutes straight away, or be on the depth chart right away because of the fact that this team is lack depth pretty much everywhere on this starting 11. But let me know in the comments below, what do you think of this video? And if you're an Orlando City fan, what do you think is the highlights, the lowlights, the MVP revelation, disappointment, and moving forward, how is this team going to look like heading into next season? But until then, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure you guys leave a like, smash the subscribe button, and yeah, I of course will see you guys next time.